You are also, among many things, a martial artist, both judo and jiu-jitsu. How has this helped make you the person you are?
So, I mean, I was a competent club player in judo and grappling. I mean, I was, by no means any kind of a superstar, but it was, I went through a few phases with it where I did some when I was quite young, a little bit more when I was 17. And then I got into it kind of seriously in my mid 30s. And, I went pretty far with it. And I was, pretty good at some of the things that I was doing. And I did appreciate it quite a bit where, I mean, on the one hand, it's always if you're going to do exercise or something, it's a more motivating form of exercise. If someone is
Yeah.
crushing you, you are
Yes.
like you're motivated to do something about that, to
Yes.
up your attributes and be better about getting
Up
out
your
of that.
attributes, yes.
But there's also that sense that like I was not a sports guy. I did do wrestling in junior high, and I often wish that I think I would have been good for me if I'd carried that on into high school and had a little bit more of that. I mean, it's like I filch a little bit of wrestling vibe with always going on about embracing the grind and like that
Mm,
push that I associate with the wrestling team
yes.
that I, in hindsight, I wish I had gone through that and pushed myself that way. But
Mm.
even getting back into judo and jujitsu in my mid 30s as usually the old man on the mat with that, there was still the sense that I, working out with the group and having the guys that you're beating each other up with it, but you just feel good coming out of it. And I can remember those driving home, aching in various ways, and just thinking it's like, oh, that was really great. And it's mixing with a bunch of people that had nothing to do with any of the things that I worked with. Every once in a while, someone would be like, "Oh, you're the Doom guy," and but for the most part, it was just different slice of life. A good thing. And I made the call when I was 40. That's like maybe I'm getting a little old for this. I had separated a rib and tweaked a few things, and I'd
As
gotten
one
out of it
does.
without any really bad injuries. And was like, have I dodged enough bullets? Should I hang it up? I went back. I've gone a couple times in the last decade trying to get my kids into it a little bit. I didn't really stick with any of them, but it was fun to get back on the mats. Really hurts for a while when you haven't gone for a while, but I still debate this pretty constantly. My brother's only a year younger than me, and he's going kind of hard in jujitsu right
Mhm.
now. And he won a few medals at the last tournament he was at,
So he's
and
competing too.
yeah. And I was thinking, yeah, I guess we're in the executive division if you're over
Yes, yes.
50,
Yeah,
or over 45 or
yeah.
something. And it's not out of the question that I'd go back at some point and do some of this. But again, I'm just reorganizing my life around more focus. Probably not going to happen. I'm pushing my exercise around to give me longer, uninterrupted intellectual focus time,
Hmm.
pushing it to the beginning or the end
Like
of the
running and
day.
stuff like that,
Yeah,
walking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah,
got running
that
and calisthenics and some things like that.
it
But
allows you
when
to
you
still
go,
think about a
yeah.
problem and
But if
yeah.
you're going to a judo club or something, you've got
Yeah.
it fixed. It's going to be 7 o'clock or whatever, or 10 o'clock on Saturday. Although I talked about this a little bit when I was on Rogan, and shortly after that, Carlos Machado did reach out, and I had trained with him for years. Back in the day, and he was like, "Hey, we've got kind of a small private club with a bunch of kind of executive type people, and uh, it does tempt me."
Yeah. I don't know if you know him, but John Danaher moved here to Austin with Gordon Ryan and a few other folks, and he has a very interesting way, very deep, systematic way of thinking about jujitsu that reveals the chess of it, the like the science of it.
And I do think about that more as kind of an older person considering the martial arts, where I can remember the very earliest days getting back into judo, and I'm like, teach me submissions right now.
Right.
It's like learn the arm bar, learn the choke. But yeah, as you get older, you start thinking more about it's like, okay, I really do want to like learn the entire canon of judo. It's like all the different things there and like all the different approaches for it. Not just if you want to compete, there's just a handful of things you learn really, really well. But sometimes there's interest in learning a little bit more of the scope there and figuring some things out from, at one point I had wasn't exactly a spreadsheet, but I did have a big long text file with like, here's the things that I learned and here are like ways you chain this together. And when I went back a few years ago, it was good to see that I whipped myself back into reasonable shape about doing the basic grappling, but I know there was a ton of the subtleties that were gone, but could probably be brought back reasonably quickly.
And there's also the benefit. I mean, you're exceptionally successful now. You're brilliant, and the old problem of the ego,
Yeah.
I
still pushed kind of harder than I should. I mean, I was one of those people that I'm on the smaller side for a lot of the people competing, and I would, I'd go with all the big guys and I'd go hard and I'd push myself a lot. And that would be one of those where I'd be dangerous to anyone for the first 5 minutes, but then sometimes after that, I'm already dead. And I knew it was terrible for me because it made it meant I got less training time with all of that when you go and you just gas out, relatively quickly there. And I like to think that I would be better about that, where after I gave up judo, I started doing the half marathons and Tough Mudders and things like that. And so when I did go back to the local judokai club, I thought it's like, oh, I should have better cardio for this because I'm a runner now and I do all of this, and didn't work out that way. It was the same old thing where just push really hard, strain really hard. And of course, when I worked with good guys like Carlos, it's like just the whole flow like water thing is real. And he's just like...
That's true with judo too. Some of the best people, like I've trained with Olympic gold medalists, and for some reason with them, everything's easier. Everything is, you actually start to feel the science of it, the music of it, the dance of it. Everything is effortless. You understand that there's an art to it. It's not just an exercise.
Yeah, it was interesting where I did go to the Kodokan in Japan, kind of the birthplace of judo and everything. And I remember I rolled with one old guy. I didn't start standing, just started on groundwork newaza. And it was striking how different it was from Carlos. He was better than me, and he got my arm, and I had to tap there, but it was a completely different style where I just felt like I could do nothing. He was just enveloping me and just like slowly ground it down, took my arm and bent it, while with Carlos, he's just loose and free. And you always thought like, oh, you're just going to go grab something, but you never had any chance to do it. But it was very different feeling.
That's a good summary of the difference between jiu-jitsu and judo. In jiu-jitsu, it is a dance, and you feel like there's a freedom. And actually, anybody I tried, like the Gordon Ryan, one of the best grappler in the world, nogi grappler in the world, there's a feeling like you can do anything. But when you actually try to do something, you can't.
It just magically doesn't work.
But with the best judo players in the world, it does feel like there's a blanket that weighs 1,000 pounds on top of you, and there's not a feeling like you can do anything. You're trapped. And that's a style, that's a difference in the style of martial arts. But it's also, once you start to study it, you understand it all has to do with human movement and the physics of it and the leverage and all that kind of stuff. And that's like, that's super fascinating. At the end of the day, for me, the biggest benefit is in the humbling aspect. When another human being kind of tells you that, there's a hierarchy or there's you're not that special.
Yeah. And in the most extreme case, when you tap to a choke, you are basically living because somebody let you live. Yeah. And that is one of those, if you think about it, that is a closer brush with mortality than most people consider.
And that kind of humbling act is good to take to your work then, where it's harder to get humbled,
Yeah, because nobody that does any martial art is coming out thinking I'm the best in the world at anything, because everybody loses.